The baby's crying was so loud that I changed the locks. Well, what am I supposed to do then? When I asked Michael, for some reason, I heard my in-laws' voices in response. Both you and the kid can sleep on the streets. Following those unbelievable words, I could also hear my in-laws laughing. So, they're in on it too, huh? Realizing that, I said with a sigh. All right, wherever I sleep, don't complain. Huh? Both my in-laws and Michael were dumbfounded. They probably thought I had nowhere to go. But tough luck for them. I never thought I'd be locked out, but I do have a place to go. And that place happens to be inconvenient for them. Well, they can regret it after I'm gone. I don't care what they say later. Right now, all that matters to me is Barbara. If I can protect her, I don't care if you all go down in flames. With that resolve, I turned my back on my in-laws' house. My name is Susan. Next month, I'll be celebrating my 30th birthday. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but right now, I'm not doing any housework. Of course, I'm not just slacking off. You see, Barbara was born just 2 weeks ago, so I'm currently resting. That's why I'm not doing any chores. However, Michael doesn't seem to care. Why aren't you doing any housework? Just want to slack off? Even my father-in-law, who was with his wife during childbirth, seems clueless. People usually get back to housework the next day. It's astonishing that he'd say something like that. Doesn't anyone understand me? Things aren't going well with my husband, and there's a distance between me and my in-laws. I don't have my parents anymore, and I have no family to rely on. But even if I'm all alone, I must protect Barbara at all costs. That thought kept me going. Maybe getting married was a mistake. I've been thinking that a lot lately. But until we got married, both Michael and my in-laws were kind. Especially my in-laws, they even offered to cover the wedding costs, which shows how considerate they were towards me. Can we really accept the money for the wedding? It's our only son's wedding, Susan. We can't be stingy, or we'll be the laughingstock of our family. Saying this, my mother-in-law chuckled. My father-in-law felt the same at that time. Both Michael and I work in the bridal industry. Some of our company colleagues will be attending, so we can't have a wedding that's embarrassing. Michael and my father-in-law work at the same bridal company. It's pretty well known in our local area, say, kinda like a recognized company in Nebraska. Moreover, they have a broad range of businesses. Their primary focus is on wedding venues, but they seem to also manage restaurants for wedding after-party and such. So, most of the attendees were deeply familiar with weddings. Guess that means we couldn't have a cheap-looking wedding. Now I understand why they offered to cover the expenses. So, with the help of my in-laws, Michael and I had a rather lavish wedding. But the good times ended there. Once we got married and I began living in their home, they started to make demands. Hey, Susan? You're not expecting yet? Well. I gave a vague response. My mother-in-law let out an exaggerated sigh. Oh boy, you're not too helpful, are ya? Excuse me? Not helpful? I quickly retorted. But she just looked away. It's nothing. She brushed it off in an obvious manner. I was like, wait, is this what they call the cold shoulder? The thought briefly crossed my mind. But I have still felt indebted because of the wedding expenses. In the end, I couldn't muster the courage to confront her directly. On the other hand, my father-in-law treats me like I'm some sort of maid. Hey, where are the snacks? Sorry, I'll get them right now. You should have had it ready before I got back. Some wife you are. He started to grumble. I was taken aback. Some wife. What's that supposed to mean? Do I also need to look after him? I married Michael and became his wife. So I'm committed to him. Of course, I want to do my best for my in-laws too. But being ordered around feels a bit different. I wonder if this is how they truly feel about me. I was baffled by the sudden change in my in-laws' attitude. However, I didn't have the guts to stand up to them. I thought if I did, they'd kick me out. I quit my job when we got married. I don't have much savings left. Moreover, I don't have my parents. Meaning, if we were to divorce, I'd have no one to turn to. Out of fear, I couldn't defy my in-laws. Even when my mother-in-law picked on me, or when my father-in-law treated me like a maid, I had no choice but to endure. I've suppressed my feelings deep inside. Then, about 6 months after our marriage, one day, I felt sick as I was about to prepare breakfast and collapsed on the spot. What's wrong? My mother-in-law asked, sounding annoyed. I just feel a bit dizzy. You're so clumsy. I'm sorry, just a moment. Saying that, I rushed to the bathroom. But my condition didn't improve. Hey! What the heck are you doing, Susan? Leaving your chores and doing what? Sorry. That's not good enough. I'm off to work, so make sure you finish the housework. Got it? Michael shouted. I felt too sick to even respond. A few hours passed, and I finally felt better. But my mother-in-law was waiting for me in the living room. Found a good excuse to slack off, huh? I didn't mean to slack off. Don't talk back to me. Just clean and do the laundry. I flinched at her loud voice. She kept glaring at me, unaware of how I felt. Guess I just gotta do it. With a sigh, I started the chores. I managed to get through that day. But my health didn't fully recover. Feeling something was off, a few days later, I went to the doctor. Turns out, I was pregnant. I hurried home to report to my mother-in-law first. To my surprise, she suddenly changed her attitude. Oh. You were pregnant? Why didn't you say so sooner? She grinned at me. And then, she quickly started making a call. It's been a while. You know, my son's wife is pregnant. Judging from the conversation, it seemed she was bragging to a relative. Maybe she'll be a bit kinder to me now. That was the hope I clung to. But I was wrong. Even after learning about my pregnancy, my in-laws treated me the same. Even worse, I overheard my father-in-law saying something. Once the heir is born, we don't need her. We could even let her go. He was happily chatting on the phone with an acquaintance. I was utterly taken aback. All they really wanted was an heir. I kind of knew it from the way they treated me. But hearing it out loud made it all the more painful. I bit my lip and continued with the housework. Of course, I thought about discussing this with Michael. But right after finding out about my pregnancy, Michael started coming home late. When I asked him why, Michael replied with a sharp tone. You're pregnant, so I've done my part as a husband, haven't I? What do you mean? If a wife doesn't get pregnant, folks talk, right? I just did my part to help with that. And so, Michael just rambled on with his selfish reasoning. What the heck, Michael? Stop joking around. Enough. All you need to do is give birth. That's your duty as a wife. Michael looked at me as if he married me out of obligation. At that moment, everything became clear. Michael wasn't going to support me. In fact, he wasn't even on my side. I was all alone here. Besides, my in-laws were never kind to me. They were just kind to ensure their heir and to have someone do the housework. Realizing that, my spirit broke. All my love and feelings for Michael vanished. Oh, yes. I'm gonna divorce him once the baby is born. From that day on, that's what I started thinking. In that case, I need to be prepared for the divorce. In the short time before giving birth, I hired someone to investigate Michael and my in-laws. And soon, the day came for me to give birth. A beautiful baby girl was born. I named her as Barbara. The day we brought Barbara home, both my in-laws and Michael were thrilled. However, their expressions gradually darkened. And then, tragedy struck. It was on the day of Barbara's 1-month checkup. After the checkup, I was given a ride by Mr. Smith, the CEO of Michael's company. Apparently, Mr. Smith's daughter had given birth around the same time I had. So, we ended up having our checkups together, and I got a ride due to Mr. Smith's kindness. But there was a problem when we got to my house. For some reason, the front door key wouldn't work. I knocked at the door and called out. Hey, Michael? I can't open the door. From inside, I heard Michael's voice. The baby kept crying at night, so I changed the lock. You changed the front door lock without telling me? When I asked him that, Michael raised his voice. She cries all day. I want to enjoy some quiet time, so don't come back. So, what am I supposed to do? When I asked Michael, surprisingly, I heard my in-laws respond. You and the kid can sleep on the streets. Following that unbelievable statement, I could hear my in-laws laughing. So, they're in on this too, huh? Realizing that, I responded sarcastically. Fine, don't complain wherever I end up sleeping. Huh? Both my in-laws and Michael sounded shocked. They probably thought I had nowhere to go. But joke's on them. I didn't expect to be locked out, but I have somewhere to go. And that place will be inconvenient for all of you. They'll regret it later. And I won't care about what they say then. Right now, the only thing that matters to me is Barbara. If I can protect her, I don't care if you all go down. I made up my mind and turned my back on my in-laws. I then approached Mr. Smith. You heard everything, right? Of course, I did. So, about what we discussed earlier, could you help me? I asked Mr. Smith. By the way, that conversation was about something Mr. Smith had mentioned during the ride. Actually, there are several postnatal care hotels. Mr. Smith's company, which is into the bridal business, was also considering incorporating this postnatal care. From marriage to childbirth, to raising kids. I really want to have a long-term relationship with our customers. That's what Mr. Smith had been saying. And he'd approached me, asking if I wanted to be a consumer monitor their plan. I posed a question and Mr. Smith nodded in agreement. Let me guide you through it. Thank you. That being said, I can't stand that attitude. Mr. Smith looked sternly at Michael's in-laws. Probably contemplating some form of retribution for Michael and the other two. Well, as a company CEO, it's hard to ignore such things. Especially if the company is venturing into the children's business. With that thought, I made a proposal to Mr. Smith. Upon hearing the plan I'd thought of even before giving birth, Mr. Smith nodded deeply. Let's collaborate on that proposal. Thank you. That's how I gained a powerful ally. However, I was dead tired. So, they had me transported straight to a postnatal care facility, kind of like a luxury facility. Thanks to Mr. Smith's influence, I got to stay in a premium suite. The postnatal care plan experience was top-notch. The facility had specialized staff like midwives available 24/7. The support was comprehensive, and many amenities were provided for relaxation. There were other new moms around, and for the first time in a while, I could really take it easy. I wish I could stay here forever. That feeling just came out of my mouth. I could really rest. And then, the next day, Mr. Smith came to visit me. In front of me, he called Michael. Soon, Michael answered. Ah, is that you, Michael? Sorry to disturb you during your break. No worries. What can I do for you? Well, actually, I have a favor to ask. After a brief pause, Mr. Smith continued. I'd like you guys to be models for our brochure. Can you do it? You mean my wife, daughter, and I? Look, your daughter was just born, right? She'd be perfect for the brochure. True, for a bridal-related brochure, they'd be the ideal choice. But Michael had just kicked me out. There's no way he'd agree under these circumstances, right? I couldn't help but smirk. If Michael refused a direct request from the president himself, there's no way it wouldn't impact his career advancement. That was my plan, to damage Michael. But Michael immediately accepted without hesitation. Sure thing. I got this. I was flustered. Now, I can't damage Michael. My plan was a total bust. Just when I thought that, Mr. Smith smirked. Then, Mr. Smith said to Michael, "Can you come to the studio right away? How about in an hour?" Wait, in an hour? Yeah, I'll get the crew ready, so. As Mr. Smith was speaking, Michael interrupted in a panic. Hold on a sec. Today's a bit. What's the matter? Well, I have to discuss with my wife. Michael began to fumble for words. Seems he thought he could convince me if he had more time. That's what you get for agreeing without thinking. Serves him right. I couldn't help but grin. Why don't you talk to her now? Your daughter was just born. She's right there with you, isn't she? Mr. Smith added salt to the wound. Michael was completely silent. In the end, Michael said he'd consult and hung up the phone. Needless to say, I was bombarded with calls right after. Of course, I ignored them all. For about 30 minutes, my cell phone was ringing off the hook. But it seems he finally gave up and my phone went silent. Immediately after, Mr. Smith's phone rang. Well, my wife says she's embarrassed. I never said any such thing. As I thought that, Mr. Smith let out a very audible sigh. Really, can't even persuade your own wife? No, it's not like that. I'm really disappointed in you. As soon as Mr. Smith said that, a loud apology started, loud enough for me to hear. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll persuade her. The voice of his apology sounded like Michael was making desperate efforts to convince me in front. After letting Michael apologize for a while, Mr. Smith ended the call. Then, he dialed up my father-in-law. Hello? Hello. Mr. Smith. What can I do for you? Actually, I have a gift for you. Would you accept it? Saying so, Mr. Smith looked at me. I smiled and nodded. Do you know that we run a restaurant for parties? Of course. I'm thinking of lending it to you. Wait, lend it out? My father-in-law must have been puzzled. The truth is, this was all part of my plan. First, Mr. Smith would personally offer the spacious restaurant for Michael's father. And then, have a party for the grandchild there. Once the 1-month checkup is done, it's about time for the baby to go out for walks. That's the time for a party to show our baby around then. Any regular family might jump at this offer with joy. But our situation is different. Michael just kicked me out, so there's no way I'd accept his invitation. So, my father-in-law began to panic and make excuses. No, it's just, What? Are you gonna decline my gift? No, I'd never. It's just that we have to consider Susan and the baby's health. My father-in-law started making up reasons. I was irritated. Then, Mr. Smith interjected. Was there a problem at the 1-month checkup? No, it's not like that, but... Then, have a party there. Don't worry about the costs, I'll cover it. As for the date. Mr. Smith kept moving the conversation forward. All the while, I could hear my father-in-law's flustered voice. He's panicking, wonder what he's gonna do. I was holding back my laughter. Eventually, Mr. Smith finished talking and abruptly hung up. Right then, my phone started ringing. It's from my father-in-law. Grinning, I held my phone. Well, what should I do? No need to even ask about my father-in-law's business. So, I could just ignore it. But ignoring isn't fun. And I'd be left feeling frustrated. So, I picked up. Hello. Susan? His voice was louder than usual. He must be really panicked. Either way, I responded with an annoyed tone. Oh, is that you? Thank God. Susan, please listen to me. Huh? No thanks. I replied sharply. My father-in-law looked stunned for a moment, but quickly gathered himself, pleading with me. Don't say that. It's a once-in-a-lifetime request, please. At that point, I felt like I had the upper hand. Trying to hide my amusement, I asked. What's going on? Well, I have a favor to ask. He began to relay what Mr. Smith had told him. However, it all seemed too convenient to me. He didn't mention any instructions from Mr. Smith, nor did he specify a date and time. He just kept going on about wanting to have a party and how he'd rent out a place. So, I bluntly refused. I decline. After all, I was kicked out. No, that's not it. The thing is, my father-in-law started to rattle off excuses. Losing my patience, I raised my voice. If you send me a video you apologize to me, I'll consider attending that party. Well, he was at a loss for words. Send me that video. If it checks out, I'll go. Bye. With that, I hung up the phone. He surely wouldn't take himself go as far as apologizing to me. I was too confident about that. However, contrary to what I thought, a video of my father-in-law begging was sent to my cell phone. This threw a wrench into my plans. I was gonna make the party a flop and have him apologize to Mr. Smith. I'd have to come up with something else. Seeing my troubled face, Mr. Smith, sitting next to me, offered some advice. How about this for the debut party? I listened intently. It was indeed an intriguing idea. Moreover, I could get one over on both Michael and my in-laws. I'll go with that. I immediately started getting ready. A few days went by, and the day of the party Mr. Smith had set came around. Of course, I hadn't been back to my in-laws' place. In fact, I hadn't even been in touch with Michael or my in-laws. A little suspense never hurt anyone, right? Thinking that, I headed to the venue with Mr. Smith. Peeking into the venue, I could see my in-laws being grilled by relatives. What's going on? Why aren't they here? Something's not right. Well. My father-in-law was sweating bullets. Some other relatives were confronting Michael. You didn't leave the house with your wife? No, I mean, there's no way we could leave together. After all, we weren't living together. Still, I felt bad for keeping everyone waiting. Slowly, Mr. Smith and I entered the venue. Thank you for waiting. Finally. My father-in-law breathed a sigh of relief. Michael, on the other hand, rushed up to me. What have you been up to, Susan? Excuse me? Preparing for this event, duh? Preparations, but where's Barbara? Michael quickly looked around in a panic. Even though he had been neglecting her all this time, I replied with a sigh. I've left Barbara with a babysitter today. What? Then, what about the party? I've prepared a slideshow. That's enough, isn't it? Saying that, I brushed past Michael. Then, I began explaining to the gathered relatives. I couldn't bring Barbara here, but I've prepared a slideshow for you all. While I spoke, a staff member began setting up the slideshow. Checking that, I continued my speech. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience, but please enjoy this. With my signal, soft music began to play. The venue dimmed. At the same time, several photos were projected onto the screen. Immediately, gasps echoed throughout the room. What's this? Displayed on the screen were photos of Michael's affair, followed by photos of my father-in-law's affair. You've gotta be kidding me. You're the worst. Naturally, seeing the photo, Michael and his father went pale. But quickly, Michael dashed to stop the slideshow. Stop it. Turn it off. Really? You brought this on yourself, didn't you? This is your doing. Why would you do such a thing? Michael shouted at me. So, I shot back. It's because you locked Barbara and me out. You changed the front door locks while we weren't home. The room went silent. Then, murmurs began. Locked out? What's going on? Amidst the whispers, I exposed the conversation from when our house keys were changed. I also mentioned that Mr. Smith was there. That's a lie, right? Sorry, but it's true. Mr. Smith witnessed it and helped me out. As I said that, Mr. Smith nodded. It's over. This is the end for me. Michael crumbled. Looking back, his father was in total shock. Going forward, our company's gonna expand into children's business. So, we don't need employees who can't care for children. It wasn't my fault. I was just sleep deprived. No excuses. Resign on your own. If not, I'm ready to fire you even if it causes a scene. The determination of the president was intense. In the end, Michael and his father resigned immediately. After that, I proposed a divorce to Michael. Having those revealing photos of his affair made our divorce process smooth. Additionally, Michael settled by paying me child support for Barbara. He just got cash out his leave, so he wouldn't struggle for money right now. Interestingly, his mistress claimed she didn't know Michael was already married. She's now seeking compensation from Michael. Looks like they're gonna have quite a dispute, but it's none of my business. By the way, my in-laws seem to be sticking together. They actually want to divorce, but all their savings went to Michael's legal fees. To support their immediate living expenses, they're selling their family home and moving into an apartment. Considering they also have to pay child support, they'll need to tighten their belts and live frugally. On my end, I was approached by Mr. Smith regarding job offer. He was like, we've got someone leaving soon. How about working for us? Barbara's still young, but I need to work to make ends meet. So, I'm thinking I'll take up Mr. Smith's job offer in a little while. For now, I just want to quietly spend precious moments with Barbara. After all the hardships I've faced, I think I deserve that little luxury.